test is very important. You would need invigilation. You would probably have awards, things like being national colors and being able to represent a country. Many events that have things like external invigilation, then by their very nature have to have limits on the number that can participate, and it's harder to have the same geographical reach. And again, if you're selecting for the IMO or something like that, then the questions type is different to those that will be done for a mass participation event with much more accessible questions. Lastly, I think it's important to mention that the extent of the participation window greatly affects cheating unless the test is a computer adjusted test, because that can be done asynchronously. Otherwise, tests need to pretty much be done synchronously, otherwise cheating is rampant. My next question, this is question number 3, so we're moving through them quite swiftly, is which country was the inspiration for the Kangaroo Sans Frontiere maths competition? Now, there's a bit of a clue here in the sense that that you might be distracted by thinking that it's a French competition, but actually it was the Australians that came up with a maths competition in 1978, the Australian maths competition, and that, based on that, some French people saw the event and decided to take it forward. Okay, so which country then created the first edition of the Kangaroo competition? Well, I've given you the clue already. That was France. I'd just like to highlight Brazil, Germany, and Russia. In different years, all 3 of these countries have been the country that have had the most participants. Russia has had more than 2 million participants in a single year. Germany has nudged 1 million. But nowadays, and I think in 2023, the country with the largest participation rate will be Brazil. In other words, that's another country from the Southern Hemisphere that's a non-traditional maths power. They've, however, taken making maths participation to heart. When was the first Kangaroo Sans Frontiers event run? Well, it was 1991, the year I finished school. Interesting enough, 1978 is the first year that the Australians ran their competition, so it took 13 years to get to have an international footprint. 2012 is the first year that a country ran an event in Africa, and that was Tunisia. MyTutor facilitated 3 countries in 2022, and in 2023 we'll be helping a whole lot more. But before I tell you how many, that will be one of the questions that comes up. Before I do that, I'd like to ask a question about understanding what is the potential for maths competitions in Africa. So what percentage of learners aged 7 to 18 in the world are from Africa? Astoundingly, this is 25%. Remember that number. We'll use it once more to answer another question shortly. What percentage of the current Kangaroo Sans Frontier participants are from Africa? So, for perspective, 4.5 million people will write the event this year or last year. What percentage will be from Africa? Sadly, the answer still remains less than 1%. If you were to look at a map of where the Kangaroo countries are currently participating, you will see that most of the continents have a higher level of participation already. And it is very clear to see that the continent with the biggest room for growth is most certainly Africa. If you were to try and work out what is the potential for Africans to participate in the event, you could kind of say, well, what happens if African learners participated in these events with the same likelihood as those from other countries? And I guess the answer to this question would actually be 1.5 million. Now, the way the MyTutor system works is that for every question a person gets, we give them detailed worked solutions. So in this case, we could argue that since 75% of the learners are currently giving 4.5 million participants, you could argue that the additional 25% should give another 1.5 million. Since the stats are predicting that by 2030, 29% of the learners aged 7 to 18 will be from Africa, it could be argued that the number of learners that should be coming from Africa should be much more than 1.5 million. So I guess what I'm saying is that's a higher bar and something to aim for. But I'm sure the Brazilians, when they 3 years ago, when they had 350,000 entrants, and they've grown to more than 900,000 in a few years, they saw this. They would have seen this as a very large irrational, outlandish outline of objective. So we're on question 10 out of 14, and I guess the question here is, what are the barriers to participation? And I'll spend a bit more time here. So I guess it wouldn't, I'm pretty certain that all of you will be clamoring to say all of the above, because it is definitely this one. People are battling to have access to events. They complain about fees. They complain about not being aware of it, their teachers not being engaged, and many teachers and learners see the problem-solving events as being very optional, nice to have, and for this reason they don't participate and don't regard it as an important part of their learning experience. For this reason, MyTutor.chat was created to try and address all of these problems. So when we considered what is necessary, the first thing I realized is, and this builds on some of the speakers earlier today, is trying to find a way to help learners who've never participated in an event to have a free trial and to have access to a preparation and practice library that they can try out the events. A way to try out events for free and in their own time, then to have an approach to market the events, to offer websites for countries, and actually what I've ended up doing is building all of the above for a whole bunch of African countries so far. I'd first like to talk about introduce you to the preparation library, and here's a little video that will show you. What we will do in this video is we will show you, it will introduce you to some of the 1,500 questions consisting of 10,000 slides that are available to any learner, and they're accessible as learners in a kind of a chat initiative. Anyone, of course, can set up an account, all for free, and then you would get a similar experience, everyone in the room.
Chat, where MyTutor.chat gives you fun problems for you to answer. Your submissions are marked and you will receive immediate feedback. On reaching a milestone, you will receive an award. You will always be given detailed solutions. They may consist of multiple slides, and you can go through them by clicking the right and left arrows. The questions keep coming and you are invited to keep answering them. Just enter your answer and hit the submit button. You will get the detailed solution even if you get the question right. This will be followed by the next fun problem. You can ask for a clue. Your MyTutor.chat will give you a hint that should help you to solve the problem. You can scroll back through your chat history at any time. You will still need to submit an answer. If you don't know what to put, don't worry. Your answer will be a secret between you and MyTutor.chat. If you get the questions wrong, we will give you easier questions in the future. Sometimes you will receive encouragement in the form of motivational messages amongst the questions that will just keep on coming. You can stop at any time and pick up from where you left off on your return.
I hope you found that a fun experience. I'll be interested to see how many of you actually end up signing up for MyTutor over the next little while. We've had over 30,000 people from South Africa have signed up, and thousands from north of the border already. I guess one of the conference topics that I proposed was actually to present on the extent to which MyTutor.chat has been a useful preparation and practice tool by looking at the impact of practicing preparation using MyTutor on performance in the South African Maths Olympiad and the South African Mathematics Challenge. The top right graph on the right it looks at the 2022 Summer and Challenge event. The bottom is the 2023 event. What those two graphs show is that as people did better and better, the number of questions that they did clearly showed an increasing amount. What this shows is that there's been a clear dosage effect in the sense that the more questions people did, the better the chances are that they did well. Of course, there's a big question outstanding here regarding whether or not this is causation or correlation, but that's a whole talk could have been presented on just that alone. The graph on the right shows the difference in the performance of the 10,000 people that wrote the South African Maths Olympiad and the South African Maths Challenge online using MyTutor.chat by whether or not they did any practice and preparation questions in advance. In other words, those that did practice and preparation questions had a 6% higher chance of qualifying for the second round than those who didn't do any questions. Again, that's only controlling for those who participated online, but there's fortunately, that's a subgroup that is roughly comparable. I would be happy to explain to everyone all the different event options in great detail and how the events work. If we have time, maybe in a question session. But for now, all I can say is that at the moment, we run two different types of events. Either a computer adaptive test, where the questions that people get are different, and that's a bit like the GMAT exam in America, and it's what Limina spoke of earlier with their teaching approach to teachers as part of their program run with SAM. The alternative is a traditional format, where everyone gets the same questions in the same order. Of course, the disadvantage of the traditional format is that there's room for cheating, in the sense that you can't do the test twice, because once you've seen it once and you've got the solutions, then you should be able to help others, and there won't be a benefit in doing it again. In terms of the format, we facilitate both online and offline participation. So when we say offline participation, what we do is we have a way for teachers to be able to access the papers and resources related to a test, which includes, say, an answer sheet, a marking guide, explanations, instructions, everything like that. They'll be able to download them as a pack, and we can limit it to either teachers that have been approved by a central body, or to all teachers, or everyone who has signed up as a teacher. These teachers can then either print out the papers and invigilate a test, or they can hand out the papers out to the learners, who can then do it in their own time. In terms of the online tests, we have three different ways. So the one is that a learner can just sign on to MyTutor.chat, access a test and an event, and run it. And for instance, at the moment, that is how the Kangaroo Maths competition is run in multiple countries. We're also letting learners are also able to sign up and do the computer adaptive tests. And for us, we have made a whole bunch of fun events. They're related to things like the FIFA World Cup last year. We have a 2023 event this year that's running for the whole year, where every question relates to the number 2023. We ran something to do with the Women's Cricket World Cup, and we will run an event to do with the Netball World Cup in a month's time, and the Rugby World Cup later in the year. Of course, the Netball World Cup, we'll be running it with countries like Scotland, Uganda, and Malawi, who will also be participating in the event. In terms of the Rugby World Cup, our event is, we only run the event in English, but I'm sure we'll be able to get some Welsh, Irish, Scottish, and English to participate as well, maybe also some Australians and New Zealanders. In terms of the, all the events on the right-hand side are things that we are hosted by MyTutor.chat. We do cater for multiple languages as well. All of these events, other than the South African Maths Olympiad and the South African Mathematics Challenge, are free, completely free. Here's an example of how a person would sign up for an event. So they'd sign into MyTutor.chat on their phone or on a computer. They'd go to the South African event, say, and then they would, if they were a teacher, they would be able to download the online and offline papers. So that is how event, if they wanted to self-start as a learner, so they'd participate online. And if they were a teacher, then this is how they would access the offline participation resources, which are a series of PDF files. Once the learner who's participating online has got through, as registered for the test, and they started it, they would then get instructions. After the instructions, they'd get some practice questions. After they've been through the practice questions, which here's an example of one, they would get the solutions to the practice question. and then they'd be able to start the test and actually get the 30 questions or whatever it is related to the particular event. They'd be able to scroll up and down, answer all 30 questions, change their answers, see what their progress on clock, which would suddenly end. On completion of the test, depending on the way the test has been set up, they will either receive their marks and the solutions, and we have found that, but in some cases, the solutions are only provided in the test window. It depends on the purpose of the event, whether or not increased learning outcomes is the goal, or whether or not it's part of the cheating deterrent strategy. We then produce things like a leaderboard, and as you can see, this is of the thousands of entries that we receive for our events. This is the kind of leaderboard we would see. We also provide a whole lot of marketing resources for each of the countries that we've assisted with. This is an example of what we've given to Rwanda. The event is available. That's a flyer that they use for their WhatsApp group. We've assisted them with various things. So far, Rwanda alone has had more than 500 people participate in the Kangaroo event. We'll talk about the other countries now. We also offer things like a daily puzzle. This is what that can be hosted on websites, as you see on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, that's an example of a website that we have created for Ghana, and you can see the various things that we offer there. If you clicked on any of those links, it would take you further down the page to additional resources. As you can see, many of the resources are available to somebody who doesn't even have an account. As I said, the account is completely free. The only reason we need people to have an account is so that we can track them, because the way our algorithm works is that based on your past performance, how we identify your level, and based on your level, we give you questions that are either difficult or hard. So it's important for us to monitor you over time. Here are some examples of how we've been featured in the media. That was an article that was written about one of the schools last year. The newsletter article on the top right, it was sent to all the 80 countries participating in the Kangaroo event. As you can see, there's lots of pictures from people participating from all over the continent. Below is a Ugandan who's using MyTutor.chat newspaper, and he even managed to get some advertising on Ugandan TV. They've had close to 1,000 entries so far this year, which again is a big increase on last year. They were one of the 3 countries to participate using MyTutor.chat last year. We also have a whole bunch of teacher resources. People have been speaking about this earlier on in the session. And here's an example of a problem. I'm just going to mute it, but basically it would explain the solution to you. What a teacher is able to do is not only are they able to access things like this tutorial.mytutor.chat resource, which doesn't require login, but offers access to hundreds of questions, all grouped in different ways, say around specific topics. The video that I'm showing you here is an example of something that teachers can use to introduce problems to their learners at the start of a school class. As you can see, it gives complete solutions. A teacher is also able to look at their students and monitor their progress. So as an example, this is the listing I took. You can get the amount of points that the different learners have earned. That's based on the number of questions that they've answered, whether or not they answered them right, whether or not they earn bonuses for achieving certain things, like a number of questions done on a particular day, and whether or not they participated in events. And you can see their test entries. You can see all the results of all the learners related to a particular teacher, all the learners that they invigilated. We also do, people have spoken about the importance of research. So we started to evaluate the extent to which participation using MyTutor.chat is leading to improved performance. We analyzed an interesting set of data related to the Brazilian data that involved 4 million records. We were able to analyze the extent to which learners' regular participation in events led to improved performance, which is what we found. Unsurprisingly, unfortunately, the extent to which this is correlation or causation is still an open question. We are, however, doing this with MyTutor.chat, And over time, we're building up a database where we're starting to have a panel set, where we're starting to see the extent to which people have written Olympiad events or multiple events on our platform over time. And we're able to separate them out by the number of questions that they've done on MyTutor.chat in practice and preparation between the events. So we'll hopefully be able to identify whether or not there's a dosage effect to the amount of practice and preparation that learners are doing, and whether or not this is seen in a gradual increase. The survey that we are speaking about at the moment on the right here is a survey of the 80 countries that are participating in the Kangaroo Sans Frontiers event. The survey is currently ongoing, and there are 30 questions covering a wide range of topics. What is best practice in advertising, promoting, and running, and the format of math competitions, as this will be gaining research from all 5 continents. Our strategy at MyTutor.chat is to always identify the pain points, change, rinse, and repeat. So every year, we will evolve our platform, it'll get better all the time. So I spoke earlier about we were going to ask a question. How many African countries will participate using MyTutor.chat in 2023? This is the Kangaroo maths competition. Well, given that there were none participated in 2021, 3 participated in 2022, the answer is, interestingly enough, 15. The 15 countries are largely the English of Southern Africa. And we've broken into some countries in West Africa. But we helped Ghana last year, and they've had some interesting growth this year, and there's all these countries are running the event until 31 August. But we're also helping Ireland, so we've broken out of the African continent as well, although we're still sticking to English-speaking countries. Here are the examples of learners participating in these events. You will see where these countries are. The video on the right is from Uganda. And I think it's a great example of anyone who's saying that people need more resources. You will see some people are using phones, some people are using computers, some people are borrowing phones and tablets. We spoke about, somebody spoke earlier on about the role of disability. Well, there's a disabled person participating in this event. And the one picture behind that one comes from Ghana. The one behind that one comes from Kenya, the one behind that one, and the one to the left comes from Malawi. There's a picture from Namibia, that was from Rwanda, and there's a whole bunch from South Africa as well. That's where we are at the moment. I could have added in more pictures, and what we hope is that to have pictures from 15 countries in the not too distant future. The video is from Uganda. We received a whole lot of very positive comments. This is related to the comments received on a WhatsApp group, all related to the South African Maths Olympiad and South African Mathematics Challenge. So importantly, we are sorting out people's needs. We spoke about earlier about running other events, and for us, the main goal of our events is to make things that are fun. So here's an example of a logic puzzle that we made to do with the FIFA World Cup, as we believe that being able to boys and girls might be very interested in trying to understand things like where their chosen team will end up in the league table at the end of a match, at the end of the group stage. This is an example of a 2023 question where all the questions relate to 2023. Here's an example related to the cricket, the Women's Cricket World Cup, and this is a question that will be run in the Netball World Cup. I would have to say that this is a particularly hard question. Anyone, you're welcome to give it a go. I would argue that this question actually relies on university mathematics, or certainly AP maths, as it is a graph question. By anyone who's familiar with it just works through the examples. What are we looking at in future? Well, importantly, last year we only ran offline competitions. This year we're allowing both offline and online participation, because it turned out that many in various African countries required the ability to download the papers, print them out, and run them separately. We keep expanding our African footprint. As you can see, we will be in 16 with Ireland. We are in discussions with some other countries as well. What we are basically seeking is national partners who can help us with reach. Of course, governmental assistance with promotion would be great, as we've seen things like teachers can often be the gatekeepers to participation. Interesting enough, our preliminary research from all these Kangaroo countries show that some countries, governmental assistance has been very useful in helping to grow the initiative. And say, for instance, when all schools in the country participate, and in other cases, not at all. Somebody spoke about earlier today about how it's often well-resourced schools that are more likely to be participating in events. We are seeing the same, although what we're doing is we're encouraging schools to partner with less resourced schools and to help them to participate. We have found that the big advantage, the big way to help less resourced schools participate is to give them more resources, things like ways to practice and prepare, as well as a wider preparation window and not requiring any fee or payment. We've also seen that many learners are keen to participate, and if their teachers are gatekeepers preventing them from presenting, then that can often hold them back. So in some of our events, we allow learners to participate, even if their teachers aren't interested. We're exploring a French version, because as you can imagine, of Africa speaks French, and hopefully we'll be speaking to Kangaroo countries, the French-speaking Kangaroo countries already, as well as the Portuguese countries, speaking countries as well, because maybe that will help us to get into Angola and Mozambique as well. It's interesting that people have spoken at this event about the role of internet access and the extent to which this is a limiting factor. You will see that almost all the resources on MyTutor.chat have been created in terms of slides as opposed to video. So yes, there are videos available on YouTube and things like that, but almost all the solutions relate to slides. The reason we have them as slides is not only is firstly that the pedagogical evidence is that this works better than video. Firstly, because it allows learners to go through the material at their own pace. So for instance, a person who doesn't have English as their mother tongue might need a little longer to understand the question or to understand the explanation. Allowing them to work through it at their own pace ensures that they're given the best chance to understand the content and master the material. That's the first thing. The second thing is an entire Olympiad would use less data than watching a 1 minute on YouTube. So we have seen hundreds of learners participate in the event, as you saw from those pictures of those kids in the hall, or at the same time with a single internet connection. Of course, we encourage people to slightly stagger the participation so it doesn't overwhelm their Wi-Fi router. But what we have noticed is that a large number of learners can write using the same internet connection. People might be asking, well, why are you doing this online thing? South Africa's, somebody spoke earlier today about only 11% of schools having, or 11,000 schools having internet connections. Well, importantly, that's more than 40% of schools. And at the moment, there's no Olympiad that's achieving a 40% penetration rate in South Africa. In the recent Pearl study, I was interested to see that 26% of learners surveyed, and that relates to all 11 official languages in South Africa, had at least 26% of learners had access to a device for more than half an hour every single school day. I was very pleased to see this comment from Scarlett, and as you can see, I think we're finding a way to bring fun to mathematics. You might be asking, what is the difference between the two pictures above? Well, the first thing I'd like to say is that they're actually taken from the same place, of the same place, just 13 years apart. It happens to be New York. On the left, there's only one car, and on the right, I think there's only one horse. And that just shows you the speed with which society changed. We often forget that the first cell phone that we ever saw, that any of us ever saw, was in 2007. That was the first iPhone. And nowadays, almost everyone at this conference will have a smartphone, and many learners do as well. The MyTutor.chat app works on a 400 Rand smartphone that can be bought from PEP. absolutely the lowest. Everything runs on in a browser, and as I said, it doesn't require much data. So maybe this is question number 13 out of 50. I think there's only 14 questions. So the question is, what issue does MyTutor overcome? Does it lower the barriers to events? Does it give learners a way to practice and prepare? Does it give teachers resources to help them improve? As a free online platform, allowing them to reach more than just their geographical circle. And the answer is all of the above, as I've hopefully shown throughout this talk. So to me, the question is that I should actually turn it around on you and say, well, what can you do, or what do you want to do about now that you're aware of MyTutor.chat? Firstly, do you want to try it out? Secondly, do you want to tell the learners and teachers about it, those that come into your circle? If you're from the government, do you want to tell the teachers in your district or region? If you're from a school, do you want to tell other teachers at your school? Do you want to tell parents about it? Thirdly, do you want to run events with MyTutor.chat? We don't charge at the moment. This is a passion project. I've invested R1.5 million in this, with my sole goal of helping to improve math outcomes in South Africa because they're sorely needed. We can facilitate events using our question library quickly and easily. And then fourth, would you like us to help to turn an existing event that you're running to use it to give African scale? In other words, if you're running an event, we can make an online edition of your event, say run it at the similar participation window or slightly later, and we can make it available to all the African countries where we have users. The answer is all of the above. So I guess for me, those would be great examples. Are you going to help us to help learners prepare for events? Those who are running science clubs, do they want to get people to participate? We'd be happy to consider running science questions, although that's not my expertise. We need the science, a database of science questions from someone else to be able to build them. If you're and I guess you can see what we're saying there about helping to make an event, give it pan-African reach. I think that's what we'll be doing to one of the university's events later this year. And again, we'll be running an online edition for their events. So in other words, the universities who are running events, who once they've developed the questions, we are finding a way to market their event in these multiple countries. I hope you're all here, and I hope you've enjoyed my talk. Do you guys have any questions? And before I open the floor to questions, please feel free to contact me on becker.greg@gmail.com and with any comments or suggestions, or if you're wanting to find out more about this platform.
How many? It is 2 eyes. I didn't see it. So on your breadboard, here, right? At the bottom here, right?